10 key points for understanding the new remote working regulation in Spain, in force since October 13, 2020. What is the definition of remote working? Remote working is redefined as the work carried out at least 30% from the employee's home or place agreed with the company in a 3-month period. What are the working conditions and obligations? Remote workers have the same rights as on-site workers regarding salaries, working time, work-life balance rights, and must be taken into consideration in gender equality plans, anti-harassment protocols, and health and safety measures. Companies must train workers for working from home and must ensure that they have the same working conditions as on-site workers. Can remote working be enforced? Neither the company nor the worker can enforce remote working. It must be agreed on individually. This means a company cannot unilaterally decide to make an on-site worker a remote worker, or vice versa. However, collective bargaining agreements or individual agreements can regulate the reversion from remote to on-site working, and vice versa. What are the conditions for an agreement? Individual agreements must be in writing with a minimum content, and their duration can be temporary. Do companies have to compensate workers for expenses arising from remote working? Companies must compensate workers for expenses arising from remote working. Can companies control the activity of remote workers? In order to control the activity and productivity of workers, companies must have a protocol regulating the use of the digital devices, while also respecting the workers' rights to privacy and personal data protection. Is remote working due to COVID-19 subject to this new regulation? Remote working established to prevent the risk of COVID-19 infection is not subject to this new regulation. Companies must, however, provide workers with the equipment, tools, and consumables needed for their work in this context, and cover the greater costs that have not yet been compensated for in the terms established in the collective bargaining agreements. What should companies do in the case of workers currently working remotely? Companies with workers currently working remotely will have to adapt to those situations within a certain time frame from the introduction of this regulation, depending on each scenario. What should companies that want to regulate flexible working do from now on? Companies interested in flexible working systems should check whether the rule regarding the 30% within a 3-month period applies to them under the new regulation, and must assess the pros and cons of channeling flexible working through remote working. How will conflicts related to remote working be resolved? If applicable, companies must check the regulation of remote working in the collective bargaining agreement and, if necessary, prepare for negotiations. Besides, companies must design an agreement that meets the new regulation and regulates key aspects of the relationship. It is essential to regulate aspects such as duration or the amount of expenses to be covered. These key points must also be considered in case of remote working from a different country. Remote working is both a challenge and an opportunity for companies after the pandemic from various perspectives, and now, more than ever, the challenge is also adapting to this new regulation.